Karnataka, the land where I was brought up, and in Bangalore, if you were in Diwali, celebrating Diwali, it's more likely I would come to your place and say, Nimage Deepavali Habbada Shubhashagalu. Diwali has such fond memories to me in my life. As a kid, when we went into Karnataka from Kashmir, I discovered the joys of Badam Puri. I had it at a friend's place and his Ajji, that's his grandmother, was making it for all of us. And on that day, I discovered this exceptional sweet, which is like a cross between a baklava and a cookie, and incredibly yummy. This is how you make Badam Puri. We start with making the dough. It's very simple here. I say that quite often, but this one is simple. Lengthy process, but amazing results. Bit of flour, almond meal, just add in a tiny bit of salt, some semolina. I've just added a bit of baking powder. I will mix it all together like in any other good cookie dough. We're gonna add a tiny bit, at least tiny by my standards. You just mix it all in. You need to make a dough, and everything that we are putting in this is essentially gonna crisp it all up and make it nice, yummy, juicy. I think it's always better to use your hands to do this stuff. I'm trying to massage the ghee into this flour mix and just bind everything together. This dough, as I've said, does not need a hell lot of moisture, but then you got to make sure that you keep feeling it and getting it right. If it comes together like this, yeah, you're pretty much there. From here, we need to add milk to act as a binder, and we do that by adding about a tablespoon, maybe just a little bit more at a time. Now we're going to add a little bit of sugar into this, although it will go into the sugar syrup, but the sugar and the baking powder, they also help bring that nice brown caramelly color onto the Badam Puri. And who doesn't love a nice brown, yummy, crispy cookie? So I'm just gonna take it out onto the bench and just knead it a bit more till it's nice and soft. Wow. So the dough is made. It's nice and soft. We're gonna let it rest a little. It might look a little crumbly. You could add a little bit more binder, but I think it's enough because I'm gonna spread it out thin. We're gonna keep this aside for 20 minutes, and in that time, we're gonna make our chashni, which is the sugar syrup. The sugar syrup for Badam Puri is slightly thicker than the usual one, so I'm gonna use 2 parts of sugar, 1 part of water to make it. We call it chashni in Hindi, and sugar syrup is quite essential to a lot of Indian dishes. That's a lot of sugar. But it's Diwali. Lighten up. Enjoy yourself. I'm gonna bring this to a boil. This is very viscous, very thick, so it tends to crystallize a little bit more. In order to avoid that crystallization, it's always best to put a few drops of lemon juice. It helps to prevent crystallization. It also balances out that excessive sweetness. And hey, no Indian sweets are ever complete with cardamom. So I've got some cardamom, some cinnamon, and some saffron. All go in. The chutney is boiling now, and you got to be very, very careful. It is molten sugar, so it burns pretty bad. But the way to find out whether it's done or not, just take some on your ladle, just allow it to cool down a little, take it between your fingers. It's got to form a string. All right, the sugar syrup is done. When it's done, it looks like thick, viscous honey almost. Now I've let it cool down just enough that I can barely hold the bowl, but as you can see, it still needs to be warm, not cold. The chashni, albeit a very thick chashni, is ready. Now we're just going to roll out the badam puris. This rolling out does not really take that much of an effort, and the reason is that as you roll out these badam puris, you can just fold them into tiny little triangles. Don't worry about these crumbly side edges, because all of it is going to be tucked in, and they kind of form those crunchy, crumbly edges that we all love. I'm going to take some of the ghee. We're going to just apply some ghee on top. Give it a fold. We're creating laminations, we're creating layers, something that I've seen a lot of people do in baklava. But unlike baklava, it's not phyllo pastry, or it's not short crust pastry like a cookie. It's somewhere in between, more towards the cookie than the baklava. Tuck in the edges with your hands, and now you just thin these out just that little bit. And now you take a clove, nice beautiful piece of clove, and you just pierce the middle with the clove. I'm going to roll out few more of these into the fryer and then into the sugar syrup. We've got our badam puri rolled out nice and cool. I did let it sit for a while to just help build a bit more crust. The ghee is hot, and now we'll just gently fry these on a very, very low flame. Don't overcrowd your pan, just have about 3 at a time. Fry them on a really gentle heat. You don't want to burn the exterior and keep that interior all uncooked. The frying does take 8 to 10 minutes. You've got to be very patient with it. These are just about done, and they're really hot. You got to make sure that you take them out, let them drain a little bit, but biggest of all, they have to be slightly more cool than this before they hit the sugar syrup. And even in that sugar syrup, it's got to be there only for some time. And I'll just put it on the paper plate for the excess fat to be soaked in. We're going to just take these gorgeous badam puris and then dunk it into this magnificent sugar syrup. And you'll see that some of that saffron gets stuck right on top. Make sure you don't keep it in for a very long time. It's just about 10 to 15 seconds. For the final garnish, before we plate up, I'll have to have a nice drizzle of pistachios. This beautiful green emerald color on that wonderful shiny silky gold of the saffron and the sugar syrup. I'm gonna add what is called the cooling spice in India, which is dried rose petals.